It is 0347 hours local time. The air above the Persian Gulf is thick with humidity, the kind of wet, suffocating heat that makes steel sweat and electronics run hotter than engineers ever designed them to. Somewhere in the darkness, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, stretching 1,092 feet from bow to stern, displacing over 100,000 tons of steel, fuel, and military power, is threading the needle. She is doing what she has done dozens of times before, transiting the Strait of Hormuz, that impossibly narrow choke point separating the Persian Gulf from the Gulf of Oman, where the navigable shipping lane contracts to just 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. On either side of that corridor, mines, missiles, and the watchful eyes of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. The IRGCN and the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, the IRIN, together. They have spent 4 decades studying exactly this moment. They have wargamed it, drilled it, and built entire weapons programs around the singular question. How do you stop the most powerful naval force in human history from doing what it does best? This is not a question being asked in the abstract. It is being asked right now, in real time, in the strategic planning rooms of Tehran, in the underground naval command bunkers buried beneath the Zagros mountain range, and in the hushed, fluorescent-lit briefing rooms of the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Manama, Bahrain, a building that sits just 200 miles from the very choke point it is designed to protect, and what both sides have quietly come to understand through decades of intelligence. Through decades of intelligence, military exercises, classified simulations, and occasional near misses is deeply uncomfortable. The Strait of Hormuz is not a highway that America controls. It is a kill zone that Iran has spent 40 years engineering. The scenario that U.S. defense planners fear most is not a fair fight. It was never meant to be. Iran does not have the aircraft carriers, the nuclear submarines, or the global power projection capability of the United States Navy. What Iran has is geography, patience, and a doctrine of asymmetric warfare refined specifically to turn America's greatest conventional strengths into its most dangerous vulnerabilities. And right now, in 2025 and into 2026, with tensions in the region at a level not seen since the 2019-2020 Gulf crisis, the question of what a real confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz would actually look like. Not the Hollywood version, not the political talking points version, but the real, operational, engineering level version has never been more urgent or more relevant. So let's talk about it. Because what the numbers reveal will change the way you think about naval power entirely. To understand why the Strait of Hormuz is so dangerous for American naval assets, you have to start with the geography, because the geography is not a detail, it is the entire strategy. The Strait of Hormuz runs roughly northwest to southeast, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea beyond. At its narrowest navigable point, between the Muzandam Peninsula of Oman and the Iranian coast, the deepwater channel available to large vessels, the kind of depth required by an aircraft carrier drawing 37 feet of water, or a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, or a Burke-class destroyer, is shockingly small. The inbound shipping lane is approximately 2 nautical miles wide. The outbound shipping lane is also 2 nautical miles wide. Between them is a 2-mile separation zone. You are talking about a corridor barely 6 miles of usable water for the largest warships on Earth, flanked on the Iranian side by a coastline that Iranian has spent decades studying with layered, overlapping, mutually supporting weapon systems specifically designed to target vessels in exactly that channel. Iran's anti-access and area denial architecture, what military strategists call A2/AD, inside and around the Strait of Hormuz, is among the most sophisticated in the world for its geographic scale. Let's start with the surface. The IRGCN operates over 100 fast attack craft, high-speed fiberglass and aluminum hulled boats capable of speeds between 45 and 70 knots. These are not primitive speedboats. Many are equipped with C-704 anti-ship missiles, 23 cannons, rocket-propelled grenades, and heavy machine guns. The IRGCN's doctrine, developed extensively following the lessons of the 1988 Operation Praying Mantis, the largest U.S. surface naval engagement since World War II, in which the U.S. Navy sank several Iranian vessels in a single day, is explicitly built around the concept of the swarm. Not one or two boats, dozens, potentially hundreds, attacking simultaneously from multiple vectors, saturating the close-in weapon systems aboard U.S. warships, forcing targeting computers to triage threats while smaller assets slip through the defensive envelope. Then there are the mines. This is perhaps the most under-discussed and most dangerous element of Iran's Strait of Hormuz strategy. Iran is believed to maintain one of the largest mine stockpiles in the region, estimated at anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 mines of varying types, from simple contact mines first developed in the 19th century to advanced influence mines that can detect the acoustic signature, magnetic field, or water pressure generated by a specific class of warship. Iranian naval assets could cede the strait in as little as 48 to 72 hours under cover of darkness and electronic deception. The logistics are not complicated. A small surface vessel, a submarine. Iran operates 3-kilo class submarines, acquired from Russia in the 1990s, plus several domestically produced Gajeh and Fateh class midget submarines, and the narrow shipping lanes become a gauntlet. The USS Samuel B. Roberts was nearly sunk by a single Iranian mine in April 1988. One mine. Imagine 2,000. Then there are the land-based missiles. And this is where Iran's investment becomes genuinely alarming to anyone who has studied the targeting geometry. Along the Iranian coast, flanking the strait, the IRGC and IRGCN and IRG have deployed multiple batteries of anti-ship cruise missiles, including the domestically produced Nor missile, a reverse-engineered variant of the Chinese C-802, with a range of approximately 120 kilometers and a terminal phase sea-skimming flight profile designed specifically to evade radar detection. More recently, Iran has deployed the Quator missile, with a range exceeding 200 kilometers, and the Khalij Fars, the Persian Gulf missile, a ballistic anti-ship weapon with a range of 300 kilometers, designed explicitly to target large surface combatants. On March 14th, 2024, Iranian state media released footage of the Khalij Fars being test-fired successfully against a decommissioned naval vessel. The impact was catastrophic. The target was a ship roughly the size of a frigate. The Khalij Fars carries a 650-kilogram warhead. A Burke-class destroyer has a displacement of approximately 9,500 tons. Do the math. Layered above all of this is Iran's drone capability, a capability that has matured with terrifying speed. The IRGCN and IRIN now operate the Shahed 136 kamikaze drone, which achieved global infamy in the Ukrainian theater, the Mohajer 6 reconnaissance and strike platform with a range exceeding 200 kilometers and a newer generation of maritime-specific drones capable of semi-autonomous swarming operations. On January 15, 2024, Iranian forces seized the MV St. Nicholas, a Marshall Islands-flagged tanker in the Gulf of Oman, using a combination of helicopters and fast boats. The operation was completed in under 40 minutes. It was not a combat operation against a warship, but it demonstrated command, coordination, and rapid response capability that U.S. naval planners cannot dismiss. It was a message precisely calibrated and precisely delivered. In 2002, the U.S. military conducted one of its most expensive and revealing war games in history. Millennium Challenge 2002 was a massive joint exercise involving 13,500 troops, multiple service branches, and a simulated conflict in a region that was, transparently, designed to mirror the Persian Gulf. Marine Lieutenant General Paul Van Riper commanded the opposing Red Force, the adversary, and in the opening hours of the exercise, he did something that stunned the Pentagon. He refused to communicate via electronic channels, ordering his forces to use motorcycle couriers and light signals, pre-modern communication methods impervious to American signals intelligence and electronic warfare. Then, before the U.S. Blue Force could fully establish its defensive posture, Van Riper launched a massive simultaneous attack. Swarms of small boats, pre-positioned missiles fired from civilian-looking vessels, and a coordinated air assault. In the simulation, 16 U.S. warships were sunk, including an aircraft carrier, in under 10 minutes. The exercise was stopped. The sunken ships were, per official terminology, refloated. The results were quietly classified. The U.S. woe, quietly classified. The U.S. Navy's challenge in the Strait of Hormuz is not a question of courage or technology at the macro level. It is a question of operating envy. Environment. The Persian Gulf is 35 meters deep on average. Too shallow for American nuclear submarines to operate freely and too cluttered with commercial traffic for sonar systems tuned to the open ocean acoustic environment to function at their optimal parameters. The ambient noise from the hundreds of tankers that transit the Gulf daily, approximately 21 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day, representing roughly 20% of global petroleum trade, creates an acoustic nightmare for submarine warfare commanders. Tracking an Iranian Gajir-class midget submarine in that environment is, in the words of one retired U.S. Navy admiral speaking on background to a defense outlet in 2023, comparable to finding a specific person in Times Square while blindfolded. Now add the psychological and decision-making pressure. A Burke-class destroyer, moving through the 2 nautical mile inbound shipping lane at 18 knots, has a reaction time measured in seconds against a Nor cruise missile approaching at Mach 0.9 from 20 kilometers away. The ANSP Y-1D radar aboard the destroyer is exceptionally capable in open water. In the Strait, with clutter from the Iranian coastline at ranges sometimes under 30 kilometers and dozens of civilian vessels generating false contacts, the combat system's ability to discriminate between a fishing boat, a fast attack craft, and an incoming missile in the final 15 seconds before impact is not just a technical challenge. It is a human challenge. The sailors at those consoles are young, often in their early 20s, and they are making life or death decisions in what the military calls a compressed decision timeline. The USS Vincennes shot down Iran Air Flight 655 in July 1988, killing all 290 civilians aboard, because radar operators in exactly that kind of compressed, high-tension, cluttered water environment identified a commercial Airbus A300 as an attacking F-14. That was not incompetence. It was the Strait of Hormuz doing exactly what its geography promises. It compresses time, space, and certainty until the margin for error disappears entirely. Here is what all of this adds up to, and it is a conclusion that sits uncomfortably alongside the conventional narrative of American naval supremacy. The United States Navy is, by virtually every conventional metric, the most powerful maritime force ever assembled. It operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each one a self-contained air force. It fields 92 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the most capable surface combatants in the world. Its submarine force is unmatched in stealth, range, and lethality. In the open ocean, against any conceivable conventional adversary, the U.S. Navy does not compete. It dominates. But the Strait of Hormuz is not the open ocean. It is 21 nautical miles of water that Iran has spent 40 years turning into the world's most precisely engineered military trap. And the physics and geometry of that trap do not care about carrier displacement or radar capability. They care only about the distance between a missile's launch point and its target, and in the strait, that distance is measured in seconds. What Iran has built in and around the Strait of Hormuz is not a navy in the traditional sense. It is a system, a layered, redundant, mutually supporting architecture of mines, missiles, drones, fast boats, submarines, and shore-based batteries designed not to defeat the U.S. Navy in a conventional engagement, because Iran has no illusions about the outcome of a symmetric confrontation. Iran's strategy is to impose costs so severe and consequences so unpredictable that the political will to order a transit evaporates before the operational order is ever given. It is deterrence by threatened cha, for U.S., not by matched capability, and historically, it has worked. The U.S. Navy has not conducted a routine, unescorted carrier transit of the Strait of Hormuz under active threat conditions without extraordinary force packages and contingency planning since the 1980s. The deeper strategic lesson here is one that applies far beyond the Strait of Hormuz or the Iranian Navy. Conventional military supremacy, as impressive as it is not a universal key. It is a tool shaped for specific locks. And geography, as every military strategist, from Sun Tzu to Alfred Thayer Mahan, has argued, determines what kind of lock you are facing. The Strait of Hormuz is Iran's lock, and they designed it. Every U.S. defense planner who has seriously studied the Hormuz problem has arrived at the same quiet conclusion. Forcing a contested transit of that strait against a fully mobilized Iranian A2/AD architecture would likely result in the loss of at least one major surface combatant, possibly more, regardless of the ultimate tactical outcome. That is not a scenario any American president has ever been willing to accept on camera, and Iran's leadership knows it. This is why the Strait of Hormuz matters not just as a geography lesson or a military curiosity, but as a window into the future of warfare itself, a future where the most powerful conventional forces in human history will be increasingly contested, not by adversaries who match them pound for pound, but by smaller, more agile, more geographically embedded forces that have studied the gaps, the blind spots, and the physics of confrontation with the kind of patience and precision that only comes from knowing you cannot afford to be wrong. Iran cannot afford to lose a conventional war against the United States. So they built something that makes winning impossible to define and conflict impossible to contain. In a 21-mile strait, against the full weight of American naval power, that may be enough.